Hey y'all, late upload. Just been a turbulent couple of days. Between, I had like 5 jobs today. My spouse lost their job yesterday. So it's just been like super hectic around here. But I said I would upload 2 today, and I'm getting 2 up today. So we're gonna make it happen. All the data's finally transferred over to my new iMac, so that's great. Or new to me, at least. And yeah, it has way less like fan kicking in. So the mic quality might be better now. Who knows? Anyway, I'm gonna take a sip from this tea, black tea specifically, hot beverage, and we'll get into it. Chapter 37. The royal ghost visits the Tang priest at night. Wukong's magic transformation lures the boy. Sansang sat in the meditation hall of the Precious Wood Monastery, reading the Litany of Emperor Wu of Liang and the Peacock Sutra until the third watch, when he finally put the scriptures back into their bags. Just when he was about to go to bed, he heard a rushing noise and the whistling of a fiendish wind. Fearing that it would blow out his lamp, the venerable elder shielded the lamp with his sleeve as quickly as he could. To his consternation, the lamp kept going on and off. By now he was so tired that he pillowed his head on the reading desk and took a nap. Although he had closed his eyes and was dozing, his mind stayed wide awake as he listened to the howling of the devil wind outside the window. It was a splendid wind. Indeed, there were sows and whistles, much scudding away. It sows and whistles, carrying the fallen leaves, blows the clouds scudding away. All the stars in the sky go dark, and the earth is covered with flying dust, sometimes fierce, sometimes gentle. When it blows gentle, pine and bamboo sound clear. When it blows fierce, the lakes have turbid waves. The mountain birds grieve, unable to reach their perches. The fish jump restlessly in the ocean. Doors and windows blow off the halls. Spirits and demons glare in the side rooms. All the vases in the Buddha hall crash to the ground. The glass lamp is shaken loose and the flame blows out. Incense ash scatters as the burner tilts. The candles flare when their stand leans over. All the banners and hangings are torn, as bell and drum towers are shaken to their roots. As the wind died down for a while, the elder in his dozy state heard a muffled call of "Master" from outside the meditation hall. He looked up, and in his dream he saw a man standing there soaking wet, who was weeping and saying, "Master," over and over again. Sanzong bowed towards him from his seat and said, "You must be a fiend, or a goblin, or an evil spirit, or a monster trying to trick me in the middle of the night. But I'm not one given to desire or anger. I'm an upright monk on a pilgrimage to the west at the command of the Tang Emperor of the East to worship the Buddha and fetch the scriptures. I have my 3 disciples who are all demon-quelling, monster-exterminating heroes. If they see you, they will smash your body and bones to bits and pulverize you. But I am full of great compassion, and will do what is expedient for you. Make yourself scarce this moment, and never come into my meditation hall again. The person stayed there and replied, Master, I'm not a demon or a ghost or a fiend or an evil spirit. If you're none of these, retorted Sanzang, what are you doing here in the middle of the night? Take a good look at me, master, he said. When Sanzang took a really careful look, he saw to his surprise that on his head he wore a heaven-touching hat, and round his waist a belt of blue-green jade. Dragons and phoenixes danced on his ochre robe. His no-worry shoes were embroidered with clouds. The white jade scepter he held was arrayed with constellations. His face was like the eternal emperor of Mount Tai. His form like Wen Chang, god of officialdom. At the sight of him, Sanzang turned pale with shock. He bowed at once and called out at the top of his voice, Which monarch are you, your majesty? Please be seated. He hurried over to support the monarch, only to find he was holding on to thin air. He looked again and saw that the man was still there. Your majesty, said Sanzang, which king are you? What country do you rule? I suppose that you must have fled here in the middle of the night because your country is in chaos, or because you were being put upon by malicious ministers. Tell me your story. Only then did the man tell what had happened, the tears streaming down his cheeks and his forehead creased with frowns. Father, he said, I live only some 15 miles to the west of here, in the walled city where my dynasty was founded. What is it called? Sanzang asked. I'm telling you the truth, father, he replied. When I established my regime, I changed the name of the state to Wuji. But why is your majesty in this terrible distress? Sanzang continued. Father, the other said, there was a drought here 5 years ago, so bad that no vegetation grew, and the people were dying of starvation. It was appalling. Hearing this, Sanzang nodded and said with a smile, Your Majesty, there's an old saying that heaven favors a well-governed country. I expect that you were not merciful towards your subjects. Even if there is a famine, you have no business to flee from your city. Go back, open up your granaries, and give the people relief. Repent of your past sins, and be good from now on. Pardon all those who have been wrongly condemned. Heaven's heart will of itself be moved in harmony, and wind and rains will come as they should. But our granaries are empty, the other said. We had no money or grain left. The salaries of the officials and the military were in default, and we were eating no meat with our royal meals. We followed the example of Yu the Great when he brought the waters under control, sharing weal and woe with our subjects, taking baths to purify ourselves, fasting, burning incense, and praying day and night. This went on for 3 years, but the drought continued to be so bad that the rivers and wells dried up. Just when the crisis was desperate, a Quanjin Taoist wizard came from the Zhongnan Mountains. He could summon wind and rain and turn stones into gold with a touch. First, he went to see our civil and military officials, and when he came to see us, we invited him to come to the altar to pray, and he got results. Wherever he pointed his magic wand, there would be a torrential downpour. We thought that 3 feet of rain would be sufficient, but he said that it would not be enough to restore fertility after so long a time, and gave an extra 2 inches of rain. Seeing how generous he was, we kowtowed to him and took him as our sworn brother. Then your Majesty is extremely fortunate, said Sanzang. In what way? The other asked. If that Quan Jin wizard has the powers to make it rain whenever you like, and you can get him to turn things to gold at will, then what is so terrible that you have to flee here from your own city? We only ate at the same table and slept in the same room for 2 years. Then one spring day, when the red apricot and the peach tree were in blossom, all the gentlemen, ladies, and princes went out to enjoy the beauty of the season. After the civil and military officials had returned to their offices, and the royal spouses and concubines gone back to their quarters, we were strolling hand in hand with the wizard in the palace garden. When we reached the 8-sided well with a glazed tile top, he threw something into the well. We don't know what it was. That made it shine with golden light. Luring us to the edge of the well to look at this treasure, he had the murderous notion of pushing us in with a splash and placing a flagstone over the top of the well. He piled earth over this, then put in a plantain on top of it. So we have already been dead for 3 years, alas. We are the ghost of one who was wickedly murdered by being pushed down a well. On learning that he was a ghost, the Tang priest felt weak all over, and his hairs stood on end. But he had to bring himself to continue his questioning. Your Majesty, what you say is all wrong. If you have been dead for 3 years, why didn't the civil and military officials or your queens go looking for you when they attended court for audiences with your Majesty? Father, the ghost replied, his powers are ones rarely seen in the world. As soon as he had killed us, he shook himself and turned into an identical likeness of us. Now he is the master of our country, the secret thief of our territory. Our civil and military officials, the 400 courtiers, the 3 queens, and the consorts and concubines of the 6 compounds all now belong to him. You are a coward, your Majesty, said Sanzang. How were we a coward? The ghost asked. Your Majesty, said Sanzang, even if the monster has the magic powers to turn into your double and steal your kingdom undetected by your civil and military officials or by your queens and consorts, so that only you know the truth and you are dead, why have you not brought a case against him in the underworld court of King Yama? There you could lodge a complaint and complain of the wrongs you have suffered. But his magic powers are so extensive, and he is so well in with all the relevant officials, replied the ghost. He's always been drinking with the city god, and he's connected with all the dragon kings. The heaven-equaling god of Mount Tai is a friend of his, and all the 10 kings of the underworld are his sworn brothers. We have nowhere to turn if we want to bring a case against him. Your Majesty, said Sanzang, if you are so powerless to bring a case against him in the underworld, then why come to the world of the living? Father, the other replied, as a ghost of a man unjustly killed, I would never have dared call upon you. Outside the monastery gates are the heavenly kings who protect the law, the 6 Dings and the 6 Shias, the protectors of the 4 quarters and the center, the 4 duty gods, and the 18 guardians of the faith, all with their horses saddled up. It was only a magic wind created by the patroller of the night that brought me here. He said that my 3 years of suffering were due to end, and sent me to pay my respects to you, Father. He told me that your senior disciple is the great sage equaling heaven, and that he is a very powerful killer of monsters and subduer of demons. I am here tonight to plead with you and beg you to come to my country, capture the evil monster, and expose his wickedness. We will be deeply grateful and repay you, Master, for your great kindness. Your Majesty, said Sanzang, have you come to ask that my disciple should go to rid you of this fiend? Yes, that's right, the other replied. That disciple of mine is good for little else, said Sanzang, but subduing demons and capturing monsters is right up his alley. The only thing is, Your Majesty, that even if he's given the job, he may not be able to carry it out. Why not? The ghost asked. Well, said Sanzang, that fiend must have stupendous magical powers if he can make himself so much like you that all the civil and military officials at court are happy with him, and every one of the consorts and concubines in your harem is fond of him. Even though my disciple has some magic powers, he should most certainly not resort to arms lightly. If he is captured and charged with high treason, we will be thrown into jail. Then everything will be ruined. But I still have someone I can trust at court, the ghost said. That's splendid, said Sanzang. Quite splendid. No doubt it's a prince or a high official who was sent off to command a garrison somewhere. No, replied the ghost. It's my son, the crown prince, who lives in my own palace. But surely the crown prince must have been banished by that fiend. No, he hasn't, the ghost replied. He spends his time in the throne hall and the Tower of 5 Phoenixes studying with learned scholars, or sitting beside that wizard on the throne. For the last 3 years, the crown prince has been banned from the queen's palace and prevented from seeing her majesty. Why? Sanzang asked. It has all been planned by that fiend, said the ghost. If the prince and his mother were to meet and start talking about things, the truth would get out. He can only keep that throne if the two of them don't meet. Your troubles, like mine, must have been sent from heaven, said Sanzang. My father was murdered by pirates, one of whom seized my mother. 3 months later, I was born. I escaped with my life on the river and was rescued by my benefactor, the abbot of the Jinshan monastery, who brought me up. I remember what it was like to be an orphan child, so I feel very sorry for a crown prince who has lost both his parents. But even though you still have your crown prince in the palace, However will I be able to see him? What would stop you? The ghost asked. If he is under such close control from the fiends, Sanzong replied, that he can't even see his own mother, how will a mere monk like myself get to see him? He will be going out tomorrow, said the ghost. Why? Sanzong asked. After tomorrow's dawn audience, said the ghost, he will lead 3,000 people riding out of the city with falcons and hounds to go hunting. You will certainly be able to see him. When you do, tell him everything that I have told you, and he'll trust you. But he is only a mortal, replied Sanzong. That fiend has him fooled in the palace, and he calls the fiend father several times a day. Why should he believe anything I say? In case he doesn't, I'll give you something that will be visible proof, said the ghost. What? Asked Sanzong. The ghost set down the gold-bordered white jade scepter he was holding and said, This will be proof. Why? Asked Sanzong. When the wizard made himself look just like me, the ghost replied, there was one treasure he failed to copy. After he went back to the palace, he said that the wizard had stolen it, and for the last 3 years it has been missing. If the crown prince sees it, he will be reminded of me, and I shall be able to take my revenge. Very well, then, said Sanzong. I shall keep it, and send my disciple to sort out things for you. Will you wait for the crown prince there? I dare not stay there myself, said the ghost. I shall have to ask the patroller of the night to send another magic wind to blow me into the palace harem, to appear in a dream to my first queen, to tell her to cooperate with our son, with you, father, and with your disciples. Sanzong nodded and agreed. Off you go, then. The ghost of the murdered monarch kowtowed to take his leave. Sanzong was just stepping forward to see the ghost out when he tripped and went sprawling, giving himself such a fright that he woke up. So it had all been a dream. In the dim lamplight he called, Disciples! With alarm. What's he going on about trifles for? Muttered Pig as he woke up. How happy I used to be in the old days. I was a real tough guy. I lived on nothing but human flesh, and I always ate my fill of it. You would have to be a monk and make us protect you on your journey. You told me I'd be a monk, but now you treat me more like your slave. I have to carry your baggage and lead your horse all day, and empty your chamber pot, and lie at the foot of your bed to warm your feet by night. You never let me get any sleep. Why are you calling for me now? Disciple, said Sanzong, I had a strange dream when I dozed off with my head on the table just now. Master, said Monkey, springing to his feet, dreams come from the imagination. You get frightened of demons before you're even started to climb a mountain. You worry if you will ever reach the Thunder Monastery as it's so far away. And you miss Chang'an and wonder when you'll ever get back there. That's why you're so full of anxieties and dreams. Now, I'm sincere and single-minded about going to the West to see the Buddha. No dreams ever come to me. Disciple, said Sun Zong, this dream of mine was no dream of home. No sooner had I closed my eyes than a great wind blew up, and a king appeared outside the doors of the meditation hall. He said he was the monarch of the land of Wu Ji. He was soaking wet and in floods of tears. Sun Zong was just about to tell Brother Monkey all about the dream and everything he had been told in it. No need to tell me any more, said Monkey. He came to see you in a dream and was evidently bringing me some business. No doubt some fiend has usurped his throne. I'll have it out with the fiend. I'm sure I'll succeed the moment my cudgel hits him. But he told me that the fiend has tremendous magic powers, warned Sun Zong. Tremendous my eye, said Monkey. As soon as he realizes that I've arrived, he'll regret having nowhere to flee to. I remember that the king also left me a treasure as proof, said Sun Zong. Don't talk such nonsense, replied Pig. If you had a dream, that was that. Why all this chit-chat? Don't trust what seems to be straighter than straight, and beware that kindness is not really unkindness, put in Friar Sand. Let's strike a light, open the doors, and see what we can see. So Brother Monkey opened the doors, and when they all looked outside, they saw by the light of the moon and the stars that a gold-bordered white jade scepter was indeed lying by the side of the steps. What's this, brother? Asked Pig as he went over and picked it up. It's a treasure called a jade scepter that a monarch holds in his hands, said Monkey, and it makes me believe, master, that the story's true. I'll take full responsibility for capturing the fiend tomorrow, but there are 3 favors I'll want you to do me. This is great, said Pig. Really great. First you have a dream, then you have to tell him about it. He tricks people at every turn. Now he's asking you for 3 favors. Going back inside, Sun Zong asked, What 3 favors? Tomorrow I want you to suffer on my behalf, be put upon, and catch a fever, said Monkey. Any one of them would be bad enough, smirked Pig. I couldn't possibly take on all 3. Being an intelligent elder, the Tang priest asked his disciple to explain why he wanted these 3 things done. There will be no need for explanations, said Monkey. Let me first give you a couple of things. The splendid great sage plucked out a hair, blew a magic breath on it, called Change, and turned it into a box of red and gold lacquer, into which he placed the white jade scepter. Master, he said, at dawn tomorrow you must put on your golden cassock and sit in the main hall of the monastery reciting scriptures with the box in your hands while I go and give that city the once-over. If he really is an evil spirit, I'll kill him, and that will be one more good deed to my credit. If he isn't, then we won't get ourselves into trouble. Excellent, excellent, said Sun Zong. If the prince doesn't ride out of the city, that will be that, said Monkey. And if he does leave the city as your dream predicted, I'll definitely bring him here to see you. If he does come to see me, what shall I say to him? Asked Sun Zong. I'll give you a tip-off just before he comes, said Monkey. I want you to open the lid of that box a little while I turn myself into a tiny monk 2 inches high, Then take me into your hands with the scepter. When the prince comes into the monastery, he's bound to worship the Buddhas. No matter how much he prostrates himself, you are to pay no attention to him whatsoever. At the sight of you sitting there without moving, he'll certainly have you arrested. Let him arrest you. Let him have you beaten, tied up, or even killed if he likes. Goodness! Exclaimed Sanzong. With all his military authority, he might really have me killed, and that would be terrible. No problem, said Monkey. I'll be there. If things get sticky, I'll look after you. If he questions you, tell him that you are the imperially commissioned monk sent from the east to go to the western heaven to worship the Buddha, fetch the scriptures, and offer some treasures. When he asks you what treasures, tell him about the golden cassock, and say, "This is my 3rd grade treasure. I also have very fine treasures of the 1st and 2nd grade." When he asks you about them, tell him that in this box you have a treasure that knows everything that has happened or will happen for 500 years in the past, 500 years in the present era, and another 500 years after that. 1,500 years in all. Then let me out of the box, and I'll tell the prince everything that you were told in your dream. If he believes me, I'll go to capture the fiend. That will avenge his father and do our reputation a lot of good. But if he still doesn't believe you, show him the white jade scepter. My only worry is that he may be too young to remember it. Sanzong was delighted with Brother Monkey's suggestions. "Disciple," he said, "this is a superb plan. When I talk about my 3 treasures, I can call one of them the golden cassock, and another the white jade scepter. But what shall I call the one you turn yourself into?" "Call it the Kingmaker," said Monkey. Sanzong committed his instructions to memory. There was no way that the master and his disciples were going to sleep that night as they waited for the dawn. They only wished that by giving a nod, they could make the sun rise and blow away all the stars in the sky with a puff of breath. Before long, the eastern sky did grow lighter. Monkey gave his parting instructions to Pig and Friar Sand. "You mustn't disturb the monks or go rushing wildly about the place. As soon as we've succeeded in our mission, we'll continue on the journey with you." No sooner had he taken his leave of them than he leapt up into mid-air with a whistling somersault. As he gazed due west with his fiery eyes, he did indeed see the city. You may wish to ask how this was possible. We were told before that the city was only some 15 miles away, so he would have been able to see it from that great height. Brother Monkey went for a close look and saw thick clouds of demoniacal fog hanging over it, as well as an abundance of evil winds and vapors of injustice. Up in the air, Monkey sighed and said, "Auspicious light would shine all around, if a true monarch now sat on the throne. But black vapors hang over the gates of the palace, now that a fiend has made it his own." As he was sighing, Monkey heard the clear report of a cannon. The eastern gate of the city opened, and out poured a column of people and horses. It was indeed an impressive hunting party. Leaving the forbidden city at dawn, they fan out into the bush, their colored flags bright in the sun, white horses galloping into the wind. Alligator skin drums pound as fencing spears clash together. Ferocious, the corpse of falconers. Martial, the masters of the bounds. Cannons shake the heavens, while sticky poles gleam red in the sun. Each man carries a crossbow. Everyone has a bow at his waist. The nets are spread at the foot of the hills, and snares are set along the paths. With a noise more frightening than thunder, 1,000 horsemen surround a bear. The cunning hare cannot save itself, and the crafty river deer is at its wits' end. The foxes are fated to meet their doom, and death now faces the roebuck. The mountain pheasant cannot fly away, nor can its cousin on the plain escape. They have taken over the mountains to catch wild beasts, and are destroying the forests to shoot the flying birds. After they all left the city, they ambled through the eastern outskirts, and before long they were on high ground some 6 miles away, where there was a military encampment. There was a very short general wearing a helmet, a breastplate, a sash round his waist, and 18 metal plates. He held a blue-edged sword and sat astride a yellow charger. At his waist hung a ready-strung bow. Indeed, he was the image of a monarch, with an emperor's noble visage. His manners were not those of a petty man. He moved like a true dragon. As Brother Monkey looked down from mid-air, he was delighted. "It goes without saying that he must be the crown prince. I think I'll play a trick on him." The splendid great sage brought his cloud down to land and charged straight through the soldiers till he was before the crown prince's horse. Then he shook himself and turned himself into a white hare that started to run around frantically in front of the prince's horse, to the delight of the prince when he spotted it. Fastening an arrow to his bow, he drew it and hit the hare with his first shot. Now the great sage had deliberately made the prince hit him, and with the quickness of his hand and eye, he caught the arrowhead, dropped its feathers on the ground beside him, and started to run. Seeing his arrow hit the jade rabbit, the crown prince gave his horse its head and galloped ahead in the field of pursuit. He did not notice that when the horse galloped fast, Monkey went like the wind, and that when the horse slowed down, Monkey slowed down too, keeping only a little distance ahead. Watch as he leads the prince for mile after mile until he has lured him to the entrance of the Precious Wood Monastery. Here Monkey turned back into himself. The hare was no longer to be seen. There was only an arrow stuck to the lintel. Monkey rushed inside and told the Tang priest, "He's here, master, he's here!" Then, with another transformation, he turned himself into a tiny monk, only 2 inches tall, and squeezed into the red box. Having chased the jade hare as far as the monastery entrance, the prince was most surprised when it disappeared, and all that could be seen was an arrow fletched with vulture feathers stuck in the lintel. "That's odd," he exclaimed. "Very odd indeed. I'm quite sure that I hit the jade here. It can't have disappeared, leaving only my arrow here. I suppose that over the years the hare must have become a spirit." Pulling his arrow out, he saw the words, Royally Founded Precious Wood Monastery, written large over the entrance. I remember, he said to himself, some years ago when my father was in the palace's throne hall, he sent officials with gifts of money and silk for the monks here to build a Buddha hall with Buddha statues. I didn't expect to come here today, but, as they say, to hear the monk's words when you pass a shrine is half a day's rest from the vanity of life. The crown prince dismounted and was just on the point of going inside when his personal guards and the 3,000 horsemen galloped up in a great crowd, all pushing and shoving to get into the monastery. Deeply alarmed, the monks all came out to kowtow in greeting and lead the prince into the monastery's main hall, where he worshipped the statues of the Buddhas. When he raised his head to look around before taking a stroll along the cloisters to see the sights, he noticed a monk sitting right in the middle of the hall. "What effrontery!" he exclaimed. "I, the Crown Prince, have come to visit this monastery in person today, and although the monks did not have to travel to meet me, as they were not notified by royal decree, this monk should at least have got up when I arrived with all my army. How dare he carry on sitting there?" He then ordered that the monk be arrested. At the word arrest, the officers standing to either side of the prince all seized Sanzang at once, and got ropes ready to tie him up with. Monkey was now silently praying in his box. "Heavenly kings who protect the Dharma, 6 Dings and 6 Shias. I have a plan to subdue a demon, but this prince doesn't know what he's doing, and he's going to have my master tied up. You must protect him at once. If you allow him to be tied up, you'll all be in trouble." None of them dared disobey the great sage's secret instructions, and they did indeed protect Sanzang. The officers could not even touch Sanzang's shaven pate. It was as if he were surrounded by a wall, and they could get nowhere near him. "Where are you from, and how dare you insult me with this self-protection magic?" asked the crown prince. Sanzang went up to him, greeted him respectfully, and said, "I have no self-protection magic. I am the Tang priest from the east, going to worship the Buddha, fetch scriptures, and offer treasures in the Thunder Monastery." "Your eastern lands may be in the Central Plains," replied the prince, "but they are extraordinarily poor. What treasures could you possibly have? Tell me." "The cassock I am wearing," said Sanzang, "is the 3rd grade treasure. I also have treasures of the 1st and 2nd grade that are much better things." "But that cassock only half covers you," objected the prince. "It can't possibly be worth enough to deserve being called a treasure." "The cassock may not cover both shoulders," replied Sanzang, "but there is a poem about it that goes, 'Of course a monk's habit leaves one shoulder bare, but it covers a true Buddha free from worldly dust. This was the true achievement of thousands of needles. 9 pearls and 8 treasures formed its spirit. Fairies and holy women sewed it reverently, as a gift to a dhyana monk to purify his body. Failure to greet your highness may be overlooked. But what use is a man who avenges not his father? Hearing this put the crown prince into a fury. "You're talking nonsense, you impudent monk!" he shouted. "You can use your gift of the gab to overpraise your tatty little garment if you like, but you'll have to tell me what's wrongs to my father I've failed to avenge." Sanzang took a step forward, joined his hands in front of his chest, and said, "Your Royal Highness, how many great kindnesses does a man receive on earth?" "4," the prince replied. "What are they?" Sanzang asked. "There is the kindness that heaven and earth show by covering and supporting him," said the prince. "There's the kindness of the sun and the moon in giving him light. There's the kindness of his monarch in giving him land and water. And there is the kindness of his parents who rear him." "Your kindness is mistaken," said Sanzang with a smile. "People are only covered and supported by heaven and earth, lit by sun and moon, and provided with land and water by their monarchs. They are not brought up by fathers and mothers." "Monk!" roared the prince in anger. "You shaven-headed, food-scrounging tramp! You rebel! Where would people come from if they did not have parents to rear them?" "That is something, your highness," said Sanzang, "that I do not know. But I have in this box here a treasure called the King-Maker, who knows everything that has happened or will happen for 500 years long ago, 500 years in the present era, and 500 years in the future after that, making 1,500 years in all. He will be able to tell us about not knowing the kindness of being reared by parents. He has made me wait here for a very long time." "Bring him out, and let me see him," said the crown prince. As Sanzang opened the lid of the box, Brother Monkey jumped out and started rushing around on both sides of it. "A tiny speck of a man like that couldn't possibly know anything." As soon as Monkey heard this objection to his size, he used his magic powers to stretch himself till he was 3 feet 4 or 5 inches tall, to the amazement of the soldiers, who said, "If he went on growing at that rate, it would only be a day or two before he smashed through the sky." Once Brother Monkey was back to his original size, he stopped growing. Only then did the prince address him. "Kingmaker, this old monk says that you know all the good and evil things of the past and the future. Do you use tortoiseshell or milfoil for your divinations? Or do you do it by interpreting sentences from books?" "I don't use anything," said Monkey. "All I need is my 3 inches of tongue to know everything about everything." "You're talking nonsense again," said the prince. "Even since the olden days, the Book of Changes has been the best book for predicting the good and bad things that will happen in the world. It tells you what to avoid. That's why predictions can be made with tortoiseshell or yarrow. Why should I believe a word you say? You'll be making unfounded predictions of blessings and disasters to stir up trouble." "Please be patient, your highness," said Monkey, "until you've heard what I have to say. You are the eldest son of the monarch of Wuji. 5 years ago there was a disastrous drought in your country that caused your people terrible suffering. The king, your father, and his ministers prayed devoutly for rain, but not a drop fell until a Taoist wizard from the Jiangnan Mountains, who could summon up winds and rain, turned stone into gold. Because the monarch was too fond of the wizard, he took the wizard as his sworn brother. Is this all true so far? Yes, yes, said the crown prince. Go on. When the wizard disappeared 3 years later, who was then on the throne? You're quite right. There was a wizard, said the prince, and that his majesty my father took him as his sworn brother. They slept in the same room and ate from the same table. 3 years ago they were enjoying the beauty of the palace gardens, when he used a gust of wind magic to seize my father's gold-bordered white jade scepter and carry it back with him to the Jiangnan Mountains. My father still misses him. Without him, my father has no interest in any relaxation, and the palace gardens have been completely shut for the last 3 years. If the king isn't my father, I'd like to know who else he could be. Monkey smiled and kept on smiling without answering, when the prince asked more questions. Damn you, said the furious prince. What do you mean by just grinning at me? I have a great deal more to say, Brother Monkey finally replied, but this is hardly the place to talk with so many people around. Realizing that there must be something behind this remark, the prince dismissed his soldiers with a wave of his sleeve. The officers in attendance passed the order on at once, sending the 3,000 soldiers and their horses to pitch camp outside the monastery gates. Now that there was nobody else in the hall of the monastery, the prince took the best seat. The venerable elder stood beside the prince, with Monkey standing next to him. All of the monks of the monastery withdrew. Monkey then stopped smiling as he stepped forward and said, Your Highness, it was in fact your very own parent that was carried away by the wind, and it is the rain-making wizard who now sits on the throne. Nonsense, said the prince. Nonsense. Ever since the wizard went away, my father has kept the weather well regulated, the country strong and the people contented. But you say that he isn't my father. As I'm of such tender years, I'll spare you. But if his majesty my father heard you uttering such treason, he'd have you arrested and hacked into 10,000 pieces. He then shouted at Monkey to go away. What did I say? Monkey asked the Tang priest. I said he won't believe me. Oh well, the only thing I can do now is to give him that treasure in the hope of obtaining a passport so that we can carry on towards the western heaven. Sanzang handed the red box to Monkey, who took it, shook himself, made it disappear. It was, after all, one of his own hairs transformed, and put it back on his body. He then presented the white jade scepter with both hands to the prince. A splendid monk you are, I must say, exclaimed the crown prince on seeing it. 5 years ago you came here as a Quanjin wizard to trick my family out of its treasure, and now you've come back as a Buddhist monk to present it to me. Arrest him, the prince shouted, and as the order was passed on, Sanzang pointed to Monkey in his terror and panic and said, You wretched protector of the horses, all you can do is cause gratuitous trouble in which you get me involved. Monkey rushed forward to stop him. Shut up, he said, or you'll give the game away. I'm not called Kingmaker. I have a real name." "Come here," shouted the angry crown prince. "I want your real name, so that I can hand you over to the legal authorities for sentence." "I am this elder's senior disciple," said Monkey. "My name is Sun Wukong. As I'm going with my master on his way to fetch the scriptures from the western heaven, we took shelter here last night. My master was reading sutras late last night, and he had a dream in the third watch. In his dream, His Majesty your father told my master that the wizard had murdered him by pushing him into the eight-sided well with glazed tiles in the palace gardens. The wizard then turned himself into such a good likeness of your father that none of the officials at court could tell the difference. You were too young to know any better and banned from the harem. The garden was closed. This was because he was afraid that the truth would get out. His Majesty your father came last night specifically to ask me to put the fiend down. I was worried in case the present king wasn't really an evil spirit, but when I took a look from up in the air, I saw that he definitely is. I was just going to grab him when you rode out of the city to go hunting. The jade hair you hit with your arrow was me. I led you to this monastery to meet my master. Every word I have told you is the truth. You can recognize that white jade scepter, so why don't you bow in gratitude to the father who reared you and avenge him?" At these words, the crown prince was deeply distressed, and he said to himself in his grief, "Perhaps I shouldn't believe what he says, but it does seem to be rather convincing. But if I do believe him, however can I face my father in the palace?" He was indeed caught upon the horns of a dilemma, wondering what on earth he ought to do. Seeing that he was unable to make up his mind, Monkey went up to him and said, "No need for all these doubts, your highness. Why don't you ride back to the capital and ask Her Majesty the Queen how the love between her and your father is compared with 3 years ago? That's the only question that will prove that I'm telling the truth." That changed the prince's mind for him. "That's it," he said. "I'll ask my mother." He sprang to his feet, put the scepter in his sleeve, and was just about to go when Monkey tugged at his clothes and said, "If all your men and horses go back, it'll give the game away and make it much harder for me to succeed. You must ride back alone and not draw attention to yourself or make a fuss. Don't go in through the main gate. Use one of the back gates instead. And when you enter the women's quarters in the palace to see your mother, don't shout or make a lot of noise. You must keep your voice down and talk very quietly. That fiend probably has tremendous magical powers, and once the cat is out of the bag, your mum's life won't be worth tuppence." The crown prince accepted these instructions with great respect, then went outside the monastery gates to give these orders to his officers. "Stay encamped here and do not move. I have some business to attend to. Wait till I come back, and then we shall all return to the capital together." Watch him, giving his orders to the army to encamp. He rides back to the city as if on wings. If you don't know what was said when he met the Queen, listen to the explanation in the next installment.